What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Off the Top Rope, Off the Mic Sports Network. Some news came out. Fridays usually is the Dave Meltzer news dump, as I call them. Wrestling Observer newsletter comes out. A bunch of stuff comes out. A lot of it's not true because Dave Meltzer, as I've said on this channel, is a hack. Once a respected, journalist and a very good historian, and a lot of people lean on his ratings and stuff. But he is really, since AEW's launch, really leaned heavily AEW, and a lot of his stories have just completely missed. But he had a very interesting report that, I'm not going to say completely is valid, but there is potentially some credence to the possibility that this could happen. The report says in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, officials in Saudi Arabia are operating under the belief that they will host some sort of special event, and a lot of people are speculating that it could be a second WrestleMania in 2027. Now, as I said, take this with a grain of salt, because who's to say that this is actually going to happen? I mean, for God's sake, Dave Meltzer said Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss were going to face each other at SummerSlam, and literally, like, hours after the report came out, it was shown that Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss were teaming at SummerSlam and continuing their partnership as the allies of convenience, and they ultimately beat Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez for the tag team championships at SummerSlam. So, look, he's missed a lot. I will give him credit for this. He kind of nailed a lot of the stuff with The Rock kind of disrupting the whole, John Cena heel turn and some of the stuff that went into that. A lot of what he said actually seems like it happened. But I'm not here to really talk about Dave Meltzer. I'm here to talk about, the concept and the validity of WWE potentially putting on a second WrestleMania, including one in Saudi Arabia. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to tell you guys that WWE is not going to go to Saudi Arabia for a significant event. They're going there in 2026 to the Royal Rumble. WrestleMania or SummerSlam in Saudi Arabia is going to happen before the end of this partnership it's a 10-year partnership that started in 2018. I don't know if they're going to have to make up events because of COVID. Maybe that, I don't know what the terms of that were. They're only doing one event there this year. Crown Jewel normally happens this year, but they're only doing one. They did that one already with Night of Champions back in June. But like I said, TKO is going to TKO. They're going to do whatever they want to get every ounce of money that they can. Saudi Arabia is loaded with a lot of money. Call it blood money. I don't like these events any more than you guys do. It makes them a ton of money. Vince agreed to this partnership, and TKO wasn't going to get out of it either. Hell, they promote Riyadh season on the side of their rings. This is what it is, okay? But that's one thing. I don't like that. Now, if WWE is actually going to go through with a super WrestleMania, a WrestleMania for Saudi Arabia, if they are dumb enough to do that, fuck TKO and WWE. Because 40 plus years of WrestleMania history is going to get bastardized by doing literally the most iconic sports entertainment event that we will see. People may not love it. A lot of people love AEW. The wrestling Super Bowl is WrestleMania. If you want to go out and duplicate that in the same year just because you have a partnership with Saudi Arabia, fuck you. Fuck you if you want to do that. Like, I have not liked a lot of things at TKO, but I'm willing to look past it. Vince McMahon in 2018 put on the greatest Royal Rumble. You remember what a shit show that show was? They put on a 50-man Royal Rumble with a sumo wrestler that I've never heard of. Fucking Big Cass almost won the damn thing. Braun Strowman won a title belt, and they never referenced it again. Daniel Bryan's performance in that, which was incredible, is not even remembered. Kurt Angle was in that. You had a bunch of people that I've never, some guy named Dan Matha. I mean, think about this. The most memorable thing out of that Saudi Arabia show, which was, I think was the first one that they ever did, the greatest Royal Rumble, which they, like I said, they made it a 50-man Royal Rumble. It might have been Chris Jericho's last appearance too. The most memorable thing from that is Titus World Slide. You guys remember Titus O'Neil running down to the ring and tripping and falling and sliding so far underneath the ring? It was one of the most funny things I've ever seen. That's the most, like I said, I remember a couple things about that Royal Rumble, but there was a bunch of nobodies in that match. Nobody cared. Nobody, like, a lot of people are still going to Saudi Arabia. Like I said, if you want to bring WrestleMania to Saudi Arabia, sure, whatever. I don't like it, but at this point, it seems inevitable. Where I'm going to draw the line is if you're going to actually go through with a second WrestleMania, after you have one WrestleMania, and completely bastardizing over 40 years of history with the singular preeminent event in sports and entertainment, the wrestling Super Bowl, and you're going to just go to Saudi Arabia just because you can get an extra paycheck, fuck you, TKO. I'm dead fucking serious. This would be listen, I'm not happy with what they did with, obviously bringing back Brock Lesnar. A lot of people don't like I said, I understand why a lot of people are fine with it, because they want to believe what they want to believe. But the reality of the situation is Saudi Arabia, listen, it's like I said, it's one thing to just do an event because you have a partnership with them. But like I said, when it goes from deviating away from your calendar just to make an extra event just to please the people in Saudi Arabia, seriously, if that's what's going on here, and like I said, I'm leaning into this with a grain of salt because of who's reporting it. If this actually comes to fruition, I thought the greatest Royal Rumble, honest to God, was one of the worst ideas that I've ever heard of, especially with the way that it was executed. If you think that this that a Super WrestleMania is an actually good idea, I know some people are going to just tell me, oh, hey, it's going to get them more money. Who gives a shit? These people show up to these events, whether it's Crown Jewel, Night of Champions, King and Queen of the Ring, whatever. You don't need to attach the greatest name in live entertainment to that show and just basically make it a knockoff event. Nobody remembers what happened in the greatest Royal Rumble. Nobody fucking cares about that. They don't even reference it as a true Royal Rumble. So you think any of that is going to matter? That's the other part of this. None of this is going to matter. This is in the name of making money. And if that's what this is about, then what the fuck are you? I understand the name of the game is to make money, but also the name of the game is also to not just completely cheap out some of the traditions that you have made on your calendar for the last 4 decades. That's what I can't get past here with this whole idea of, another WrestleMania. It's really, somebody asked me about this in the chat on one of my post shows, whether it was, after Dynamite or after SmackDown. I think it's a terrible idea. I think it really it would, honest to God, that'd be one of the worst things that I think WWE could do. And they've done a lot of bad things. But from a wrestling perspective, if you're talking about that and you're talking about cheapening your brand, one of your biggest brands that you've ever had, why the fuck you do it? Just to make a quick buck? You could go there having the other big special event. You're already going there for the Royal Rumble, and it's actually going to be that. And that in itself, I think, sucks. That sucks. But they have a partnership there, and on some level, I can get to that, and they're tied to that. But bringing a second WrestleMania there, that's too much for me. Anyway, thanks so much. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.